Here's why I'm giving up meditation. I've been meditating daily, maybe for 4 or 5 years now. Before I started, I remember I just had so many whirring thoughts, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I just cared a lot about what people were thinking about me. But there were always some odd things about meditating that I found curious. I remember once I went to a meditation group, beautiful community, so welcoming, and a really important part of establishing myself in a new city. But this guy showed up. I had long hair, probably a hippie, and we were just talking about our practice. And he said, "Oh, I love meditating. I'm addicted to meditating." And I thought, that's a weird thing to say, to be addicted to meditating. How unusual. And I started to ask him about it. And he said, well, yeah, it's how I get my sense of peace, my sense of calm. And he said at home he had a daughter, and when things got really difficult, he just would shut himself off. He'd be like, I'm going to my room and I'm just going to meditate. And he'd be like, and in that place of meditation, I'm just in such a set place of bliss. I don't want to leave. I'm addicted to meditating. And he was saying it in a bit of a flippant way, but it also shocked me a little, quite frankly. And I suppose what it was hinting at is that meditation can be a form of avoidance. You enter into a place where you can shut out all of the external world, everything that bothers you, and you can just focus on your own inner state, and you can let these feelings go, let these thoughts go. Just bring yourself back to the breath or to the body or whatever it is that you're doing. So something supposedly very helpful and healing can become quite destructive when it's used as a form of avoidance. And interestingly, that's like any form of addiction. I did a lot of research on smoking because I built a hypnosis app to help people stop smoking. And one of the main insights was that smoking is just a form of self-regulation. It's a pattern of behavior that people have caught on to that helps them to bring them to a place of calm, to regulate their nervous system, to essentially just feel good. And what we do in life is we seek out these things that make us feel good and we repeat them. So for a lot of people, when they start smoking, they're teenagers. They're not fully formed in terms of maturity and development. And they find this thing that makes them feel good. And maybe their parents have been smoking as well, so this behavior has been modeled, and that just becomes their crutch. So it's not necessarily that the nicotine is so physiologically addictive. It's actually the psychological component that's so important in addiction. So these ideas have been bubbling away in me for a while, and I suppose in the last few months, I've just been experimenting with not meditating. What's it like to have a day where I don't meditate? What happens to my mind? And what I discovered was that my mind was immediately scattered. I would find myself quite distracted and affected by the day and potentially stressed and all of these things. I just didn't feel quite like me. But it was also just something I was drawn to experimenting with. And then recently I've been doing this course, building an online business, a coaching business. And this is all about how you can scale and how you can do marketing, but also how you can apply some psychological foundations. It's by someone called Sam Ovens. And he was talking about duality. And duality is a concept that I've come across and started to explore a little bit, but never really clicked with me. I suppose I read the Tao Te Ching, and it talks a lot about duality. This idea that there are always two opposites, right? So you cannot have hot without cold. You cannot have light without dark. You cannot have joy without sadness. We need these two poles in order for one of them to exist. Everything exists by contrast, which is a fascinating concept when you think about it. If we lived in a world where there was no night, the sun never set, we wouldn't know what daytime is. It just wouldn't be a thing that we observe. So where there is no contrast, where there is no poles, no binary, it basically doesn't exist to the human mind. Everything observable has an opposite. And what does that mean about us as an identity, as a self? we become so fixated on who we are, and that becomes defined over our life. I'm someone who loves singing. I'm someone who loves to cook. Or I never get in arguments. I avoid those things. We build up this image of ourselves over time, and very often it's affirmed by the people around us. One of the examples Sam gave is that as a boy in school, he struggled with times tables. And his teacher said to him, "Sam, you're no good at times tables." And he took that on as a belief and repeated it over and over again in his mind. He was like, "I'm not good at times tables. I'm not good at maths. I'm not good at times tables." And interestingly, as we repeat things enough times and they get affirmed by others, they become our reality. And so pretty soon, everyone around him was like, "Oh yeah, Sam is no good at times tables. He can't do maths." And he wasn't able to do maths. But it's just a belief. But it becomes a binary. I am this, I am not this. And what I found interesting about this concept of the poles, or of these binaries, is that it weaves in with the idea of the shadow by Carl Jung. And the shadow, I've always found, is very murky, difficult to understand concept. What does it mean for us to have a shadow, this part of us that we don't see, that we need to somehow integrate? It's like this giant blind spot. How are you possibly meant to know what your shadow is? You can look at your shadow by looking at your light. How do you define yourself right now? Who are you in the way that you see yourself right now? So if you see yourself as someone who is incredibly intuitive and emotional, your shadow or your dark side is actually the analytical, rational side of yourself. If you're someone who's incredibly compassionate and loving, your shadow is the part of you that is unkind and judgmental. And we all have it, and it's okay. We are these incredibly complex beings with a multitude of parts, but we fixate on certain aspects. And so a key idea is that in order to grow as human beings, we need to explore our dark bits. We need to explore our shadow. If you really want to achieve your dreams, you're not going to achieve them by being you. You just won't. Otherwise, you would have achieved them by now. There is a version of you that is deserving of that dream. There's a version of you that is required in order to fulfill it. And so for me, for example, I know that I need to step out into the world more. I know that I need to be in the center of attention, which is something I've avoided for most of my life. And that's because I want to share what I've learned. It's because I feel drawn to helping others, and I can't do that from the sidelines. So that's my shadow. It's a part of me. I've always avoided performance, taking up space, these ideas that I've seen almost as negative, and I've been judgmental of others for having them. And it's interesting, the judgments we hold are clues. Those are the aspects of ourselves that we deny. If you see someone and you're jealous of them, that's a clue. What is it that you're jealous of? What part of them are you seeing expressed that makes you uncomfortable? So then it got me thinking, I've started to define myself by various things. I've seen myself as spiritual, and I've seen spiritual as being right. I've seen myself as vegetarian, and I've seen being vegetarian as right. I've seen myself as kind, and I've seen being kind as right. But right and wrong are also binary. These are the polarities. There is no right, there is no wrong. We, as a culture, have this idea that being successful and money focused is bad, and that actually we should be charitable and we should be focusing on community. Neither is right, neither is wrong. And actually somewhere in the middle is probably the truth. It's the blending of the two. And so over the last 5 years, I've been so focused on meditating, and I was like, meditation, that is what I need. That is what everyone needs. Everyone should be meditating. It's brought me so much joy. It's brought me so much contentment. That is a binary view of the world. It's this polarity, and it's limiting me. I'm now defining myself by something. I'm taking the opportunity to explore the other side. Because if I don't have the contrast, I don't really know. If I'm constantly meditating, I don't know what it is like to not meditate anymore. If I'm always eating healthy food, I don't know what healthy food is anymore. My body actually doesn't register it as healthy food because I haven't had any junk food. It's good to mix the light and the dark. And when I think about some of the things that I've done in my life, I've quit alcohol for a couple of years. I gave up caffeine, gave up sex. And I was really strict on these things because I was trying to limit the stimulation in my life, quite literally in cases. And then that for me was like the complete opposite of how I'd been living up to that point. Big drinker. I was drinking all the time, partying. So to cut it out was like swinging to the other side. And now with time, I'm able to find a balance between the two. I realize, oh wait, I don't need to completely deny alcohol. I also don't need to get trashed all the time. There's a balance there. But sometimes it takes exploring the binaries in order to find the middle. This month, I'm giving up meditation. I'm going to see what it's like to spend a month without the tool that I've most prized, the tool that has really helped me to ground myself, to settle myself. When I'm feeling anxious, when I'm feeling stressed, I will come and meditate. What's it like to experience a day, a week, a month without that support? I have a feeling that I will be okay. There are a lot of fears telling me, for example, that, oh my God, you're going to lose the routine, you're going to spiral back down. How are you going to be able to be grounded enough to do the work that you're doing? Funnily enough, those fears, those thoughts of resistance, they're a good signal to me. It tells me that this is something I should be exploring. So I'm going to step into the fear and see what happens.